I think the Democrats want illegals to vote. Here in Florida, you can go to the motor vehicles department and register to vote. No one asks you for proof of citizenship. No one asks you to prove that you're actually eligible, and you go on the voter rolls. And that's the largest single source of new registrants in the state. So I think we have to conclude, as you say, the Democrats want illegals to vote because they think they will vote for the folks who let them in the country illegally and who are giving them, in New York State, for example, a pre-packaged credit card, a cell phone, a place to live. I mean, American citizens, particularly seniors and veterans, have been thrown out of housing in New York so that we can house illegals. None of this makes any sense.
All right, guys. Hope some of you are enjoying a day off. I know for federal workers, they get today off. It's Columbus Day. Don't let anyone tell you anything different. I'm here, so you should be here. This gives you more reason to share the show with folks. Say, hey, you're sitting at home, watch the show, learn what's going on. Lot to break down today. Roger Stone is about to join us. First of all, a huge thank you to everybody who joined last night for the live episode of the Road to 270. We brought in guests from every one of the battleground states. I appreciate the feedback. Yes, we had a little audio issue here and there, but we fixed it because of your feedback. I love how you guys share these ideas with me. And yesterday was obviously logistical, but we got it. We fixed it. It was an update that needed to be tweaked. We did it because of you and your feedback. So we're going to do it again soon. I'll find a date, but we do Road to 270 every Wednesday. A lot of the information from last night obviously will get incorporated into the latest polls, and they're coming out fast and furious. So Wednesday, we will have a brand new episode to update you where the race is moving. Let me just tell you right now, Kamala Harris on her heels. When you read all of the stories today that have come out, they're worried. They are worried. They know they have an issue in all the places. Frankly, it was funny because last night I kept hearing the folks in different states talk about the problems they have. Hispanics, black men, Arabs in Michigan, auto workers in Michigan, right? And it was like, okay, this morning it was almost like they were listening to the show last night because you saw it echoed in a lot of the morning coverage of the race. By the way, Donald Trump in Coachella, 100,000 there. Take a look at this stuff. I mean, this is unbelievable. One of the things that I want to just explain to you, because you hear a lot of these dum-dums in the media say, oh, Trump is going to Madison Square Garden and New York isn't in play. Yeah, no kidding. He went to Aurora, Colorado. Colorado's not in play either. But when he goes somewhere iconic, everybody covers it, right? So he's got this massive rally at Madison Square Garden. They're going to cover it differently than a normal rally. He goes to Aurora, Colorado. What do they talk about? Immigration. It becomes a big deal because he went somewhere. And speaking of that, I got to tell you, it was interesting. But just understand, because these dum-dums in the media go, Colorado's not in play. New York's not in play. No kidding. Do you think that he doesn't get this? But he understands the symbolism, the marketing, that if he goes somewhere with a massive problem, and we know what's going on in Aurora with illegal immigration, that the media is going to focus on it. And what did they do? They took the bait. I want to show you a masterclass. JD Vance proving once again why he was chosen. Well, Tim Walz, I'm going to get to Tim Walz to show you what he was doing, because you can't make this crap up. You cannot make up what Tim Walz was doing. But look at what JD Vance is out there on all the shows. So he goes on this week with fill-in host, JV host, Martha Raddatz. And she goes after him because, of course, Aurora, Colorado, and the president's rhetoric towards these blah, 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 blah. And she goes, well, I'll show you what she goes. Let's play the clip and show you what she says and how he reacts.
The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border. Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs. I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again. And unfortunately, when you let people in by the millions, most of whom are unvetted, most of whom you don't know who they really are, you're going to have problems like this. Kamala Harris, 94 executive orders that undid Donald Trump's successful border policies. We knew this stuff would happen. They bragged about opening the border, and now we have the consequences, and we're living with it. We can do so much better, but frankly, we're not going to do better, Martha, unless Donald Trump calls this stuff out. I'm glad that he did.
Only 5 apartment buildings. I mean, this is the view of the media, by the way. Like, it's like, how much is okay? How many people should break the law? How endangered should your life be? How many gangs should we let in? Do you see that, though? It's only 5. I mean, how much damage could 5 apartment buildings of illegal gang members from Venezuela possibly do? I mean, come on, JD. I mean, that's their attitude, though. This is why they are so wrong. They don't get it. They don't get it, do they? Anyway, I want to contrast that. JD Vance is running around putting on master classes. And by the way, hold on real quick. You love how he says it. Do you hear yourself? Do you hear yourself? That was such a great comeback. And it's in the moment. He's so good at this. But I think it was great because that clip went viral. I tweeted it out. I put it everywhere. And a lot of JD's folks were retweeting it because it was like, they get it. These folks in the media, do you hear yourself? How stupid you sound saying that only 5 apartment buildings? Come on. I mean, seriously, how much damage could they possibly do? Don't you want a bunch of illegal gangs from Venezuela living next to you, overrunning your town? So good. Meanwhile, by the way, Timmy, he wanted to show us what a real man does, because that's what he does. They're holding up Tim Walz as the new definition of masculinity because he wears a camo hat and he can go hunting. He talks about the fact that he kept his gun in his truck because he wanted to go hunting. The one thing about hunters, though, and I'm just, I'm not a huge hunter. I obviously fire a weapon or two here and there. But anyway, I'll just say this. People who hunt generally know how to load a gun. And if you're going to brag about your prowess as a hunter, you don't want to put out a video looking like a tool trying to get your gun loaded. And yet, here's Timmy showing us that he can't even load his gun.
And it never fits quite right.
Never fits quite right. Just not quite right. How do you give it back?
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
This was a Beretta A400. I bought it when I was shooting a lot of trap because it has a kind of their patented thing, a kickoff. So when you get old, it doesn't hurt your shoulders.
I mean, if you're going to put yourself out there as the new definition of masculinity, and I'm cool because I go hunting and I wear a camo hat, at least don't be dumb enough not to know how to load the gun. This is just emblematic of where the Harris campaign stands right now. 22 days out, they are on defense. They are on defense. All right. I want to get to so much more. Before we do that, I got to tell you one quick little pointer thing, and it came out this morning as an exclusive, a scoop from Axios. You noticed you haven't seen John Kirby, the co-press secretary, out doing much? Well, there's apparently a little problem in the briefing room. Karine Jean-Pierre has been blocking Kirby from going out. Anita Dunn left. She was the head of communications, basically, in the Biden White House. She was the protector of trying to establish some kind of normalcy. She wanted Kirby in there. She wasn't a fan. She tried to push, according to sources, Karine Jean-Pierre out for a job at Emily's List. Well, when she left, apparently Karine Jean-Pierre asserted herself and said, no, John Kirby, despite all of the talk about what's going on in foreign policy, which is kind of what you know, I'm not going to let you in the briefing room. And Axios is out with this scoop that says Jean-Pierre blocks John Kirby at White House podium. I mean, this is so petty. It's unbelievable. I mean, he clearly does a better job and knows what he's talking about, whereas she is one word salad after another. But she is embarrassed because he makes her look like a fool, because she is a fool. She doesn't know what to say. She can't answer basic questions. She talks in word salads. She didn't like the fact that all these comparisons with John Kirby were happening, and so she blocks him. Unbelievable. All right, as I mentioned, Roger Stone is coming up. Before I get to that, I want to thank one of our great sponsors. Most of you start your morning with a cup of coffee. The problem is, or a lot of you, I know this, you drive around, you see all these people going to Starbucks. I don't like to go to Starbucks. Why? Because I don't think it's consistent with my values. I don't like it. I don't like the coffee. I'm not a big coffee drinker to begin with. And if I do drink coffee, I want it to be something I like Dunkin' Donuts or whatever. But I've got this new great coffee for making it at home, Wire to Fish. I love this stuff because here's the thing. Instead of going to Starbucks and helping them finance all of their left-wing causes, Wire to Fish is consistent with values that I think I can support, right? They give 25% of their profits back to faith-based programs and to clean water initiatives. I love clean water. I love faith-based stuff. And these guys do that. They give back to causes that matter to me. And the best part about it, it is unbelievable. As a coffee, the best beans, they're sourced in Guatemala and Mexico. They're Arabica. Like, this is the good stuff. So it's great tasting, consistent with my values. I love that. So if you want to join a community of coffee drinkers that are consistent with their values, that taste great, I recommend that you head over to wired2fishcoffee.com, wired2fishcoffee.com. So wired2fishcoffee.com, and use code WeCare for 50% off. But you get great tasting coffee and you can feel good about it. So I love it. All right. As I mentioned, Roger Stone is coming up. By the way, tomorrow, Newt Gingrich. Later in the week, Eric Hovde. We talked about Wisconsin last night. He is surging. And I think that Eric Hovde, as I've said before, if you're listening to the Road to 270, and the next edition is Wednesday, is going to be one of those bright spots on election night. Eric Hovde in Wisconsin, Mike Rogers, former congressman, I think will win in Michigan, and then Dave McCormick in Pennsylvania. And I've talked to Dave last night. I think we will get him back on soon to talk about this. Listen, this is pretty unbelievable what's happening. And so I'm going to get a lot of the take as to where we are 22 days out. Roger Stone coming right up. But I wanted to tell you about a dirty trick that's happening on the left. And it's fascinating because I tried to expose this when I was at the RNC years ago, and Jonathan Karl from ABC knew about it and wouldn't do anything about it. But check this out. There's a law, the Act Blue, the left's platform for accepting donations, is just got a new lobbyist. Why? Why does a platform that takes credit card donations to help people on the left need a lobbyist? Well, there is a Congressman, Brian Stile from Wisconsin, that introduced the SHIELD Act. Okay, and what does this have to do with? Well, Act Blue, you know when you go make a credit card transaction, you get told you have to enter your address and your zip code and then the CVV number, right? That code. Well, the reason is because they want to make sure that you are you. And, well, okay, so what's the big deal, Sean? Well, think about this. On the left, if you could go get a bunch of gift cards that don't have CVVs, debit cards, gift cards, whatever you want to call them, right? You can have somebody buy a ton of them and make donations on behalf of straw donors. And Act Blue apparently turned off their CVV. You can do that as a merchant. Now, a normal merchant, you would argue, right? If you're a hardware store or a drugstore, you would never do that because you don't want someone presenting a fraudulent credit card. We caught the Democrats doing this, the Obama campaign, and I tried to show Jonathan Karl of ABC News, and yet he wouldn't report on it, because they knew that this is how these guys were putting donors into the system without actually being actual donors. It's a huge, huge loophole. And Brian Stile from Wisconsin wanted to introduce a law to make it a requirement that the CVV number be on there. And I know this sounds in the weeds and arcane, but think about it. If you wanted to introduce a ton of new money to a campaign through straw donors, here's your back door. You go out, you buy a bunch of gift cards, debit cards, and then enter them as donations with fictitious people. You'll never get caught because it doesn't require CVV if you turn it off. He wants this to be a requirement. So Act Blue goes out and hires a lobbyist because he wants to make it a requirement that the CVV be required so that they can't do this anymore. Well, Act Blue goes out and hires a lobbyist because they don't want this. Why would you want to do this? If your donors were legitimate, right? There's a reason merchants have it on, because they don't want the credit card companies denying their payment. They want to say, hey, we authenticated this payment. We knew that Sean was Sean and Susie was Susie and Bobby was Bobby. They gave us a credit card. We entered the CVV number in. There we go. We've seen it. We knew it was real. The only reason you wouldn't do that is if you were trying to have straw donors, give money through debit cards, etc. Anyway, huge thing happening. These are the kind of things that are just amazing that are happening underneath the radar that the Dems are trying to do. And some Republicans, congrats to Brian Stile for turning that off, making that happen. Interesting, we talked about immigration. I'm going to talk about this with Roger Stone, rather, the impact of it, because Trump, I mentioned he was out in Aurora, all this stuff. Here's a brand new poll that came out that was interesting. 56% of Americans now favor deporting all undocumented immigrants. That's up 20 points. 20 points. 56% of Americans support deporting all illegal. These guys don't get it, do they? The media and the left, they keep saying Donald Trump's going to do all this. Yeah, guess what? He is. And that's the point. He gets what's on the minds of people. The economy, that's why he talks about no tax on tips. He understands this uniquely. Anyway, I'm just telling you, there's something going on here. The Dems are missing the boat. They are blowing this big time on their heels in the final 22 days. And Trump and his team are playing a perfect game down the thing, which is why, by the way, there's a story in USA Today that says Trump is in a better spot polling now than he was against Clinton or Biden. Better spot. And here's the thing. NBC came out with a brand new poll this morning that shows the race virtually tied. Now, you guys know what I think of national polls, right? I mean, I don't put a ton of stock into them at all. But when you look at the NBC poll, where it was a month ago and where it is now, Kamala Harris is lost 5 points nationally. That means that the trend, as we've talked about in all these states, is with Trump and against her. Here's the thing, though. When you look at what they call the fave unfave, do you like this person or not like them? She was actually in the last poll viewed more favorably by Americans than she is now. She's now what we call underwater, upside down, if you will. More people view her unfavorably. The more they hear about her, the more they don't like her. And Trump is a trusted and known commodity. They know about the Trump record results. They know what they're getting with her. I think they're saying, I don't like it. I don't want to buy it. Just telling you, I think that's where we are right now. All right. Without further ado, I want to bring in Roger Stone to get his take on all of this stuff. Before I do that, I want to tell you about a great guy. You guys have heard me talk about it, and I talked about it last night on the show. There's been one guy that I love to tell you what he has done and his support for the show. His name's Leo Grillo. He founded Delta Rescue. It started with one Doberman that he rescued, and he realized that it wasn't just that one Doberman that needed help, that there's a lot of dogs and cats and animals, horses, you name it, that are abandoned, mistreated, abused, malnourished, that need help. And he made it his life's mission and founded Delta Rescue. And the cool part about it is when I chatted with him the first time, I've told you guys this story before, and I talked about rescuing dogs and going to shelters, and he said, Sean, it is a no-kill sanctuary for life. When you go to Delta Rescue, you get the veterinary care, the nutritional care for life for these animals. They're not looking to place them, they're looking to care for them for life. And I just love that. I mean, it's amazing. And when you look at how Delta Rescue has evolved and how it has grown, you can go on the site, deltarescue.org, and take a look at it, watch the videos. It really is amazing what he has done. And he doesn't do it with any government help. It's all because of our contribution. So if you go to deltarescue.org, I would ask that you consider a donation, whatever you can afford, because it's such a great thing to be able to do that Leo has done. But he wants to endure for generations. At the top of the website at deltarescue.org, you see one of them says estate planning. Download that if you will. Just download it. And think about it, consider it, pray about it. If you can make part of your legacy helping Delta Rescue endure for generations, because I think it's a really cool thing that Leo has built and wants to continue for generations to come. Thank you for your consideration of Delta Rescue. All right, without further ado, Mr. Roger Stone. Hey, Roger, good to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Sean, great to be here.
So I read in my episode of the Stone Zone that we had a rather epic boat parade in your neck of the woods. Did you get a chance to go out to it?
I did. It was absolutely unbelievable. I honestly think it could conceivably be the biggest Trump boat parade in American history. My good friend Carlos Gavidia put it together. There was a music concert the day before with General Flynn. Eric and Laura Trump were there for the boat parade. Now, it rained all day the day before. It rained that morning. Then the weather broke for our entire boat trip. And as soon as the boat parade was over, the rain started again. So God is on our side.
That's one way of looking at it. You know, the funny thing is, you've been involved in campaigns for a while. This is my 30th year of being involved in politics. If you had told me that we would be having massive boat parades for a candidate, any candidate, I would have said that's nuts. We have these rallies. It's like what Trump has done to transform how we campaign. And I don't think it's actually, I shouldn't say that because he hasn't transformed it, because no one will be like him again. I don't think that there'll be the next candidate will have these. It's amazing. People go out and spend their Sundays on the water. They go to rallies. It's a whole new dynamic.
Yeah, look, the point, though, of course, is that Donald Trump is a unique phenomena. I worked for Ronald Reagan. He was a great president. He was very, very popular. But he couldn't get 40,000 people on the Jersey Shore. He couldn't get 100,000 people in Butler, Pennsylvania. So I don't think there's any other public figure, never mind political figure. I don't think there's anybody else in America who can command these kinds of crowds. And I do think that it translates to support. Yeah. Unlike some of our campaigns in the past, we're actively registering voters at these events. So it's a phenomenon that I don't think we'll ever see again. Only Donald Trump can command this kind of public outpouring of love and support.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, if you're willing to go out on a boat parade or show up to a rally for hours, wait in line, you're going to get out there and vote and tell your friends. Let's talk about where we are, though. 22 days out from the election. The dynamic, in my mind, has vastly shifted. Coming out of the convention, it was all joy and vibes, according to the Democrats. And then I believe that Democrats kept waiting for Kamala Harris to give them a reason. And they finally said, okay, there's no there. And now you're seeing this shift. The Harris campaign is on defense this last 22 days. And Donald Trump has retaken the wave of enthusiasm and excitement heading into the final 3 weeks of this election.
Sure, and I totally agree with your analysis. Really what they were trying to do was to copy the Obama campaign, where he offered us hope and change, but no specifics. So it was a vibe he was selling. And after the Bush presidency, perhaps they thought that would work, and it did. So I guess they thought they could sell us joy without any specifics. The problem is that voters are now beginning to focus on the real Kamala Harris, and they find her vacuous. They start to look at her positions. Yeah, she wanted to defund the police. She wanted to make entering the country illegally no longer a crime. She wanted you and I and every American taxpayer to pay for the health care for the, 20 million people who have entered the country illegally. We did that. We wouldn't be able to pay for health care for anyone. So I think people are beginning to focus on the fact that she doesn't have the qualifications, the intelligence, or any plan whatsoever, other than what she unbelievably admitted this past week is she would do nothing whatsoever different than Joe Biden. So how does she a change agent?
Don't you find that mind-blowing that I cannot believe, as a former staffer, that you send your boss out and the most fundamental question is, what would you do differently? You know, how do you answer for the last 4 years? And you can't name a single thing. I found it a dereliction of duty on behalf of her staff to not have an answer ready to go. She does a media tour that's supposed to move the needle forward. And yet, to your point, all we're talking about is the flubs.
Yeah, I think they got two different problems. One, I think the president in the debate, when he said, let me tell you folks a secret, Joe Biden hates her. I think he's absolutely right. So Biden now is a loose cannon. Be very careful what they say about him, because he's very bitter about the way he was pushed aside by Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and the fact that he got 17 million votes. He got 71% of the vote in the Democrat primaries and caucuses, and nobody voted for her. So they're trying to minimize any damage that Biden can do to them in the final days. We've already seen him, as you know, rush to the press room in the White House, where he's never been, not even once during his presidency, to beat her to the punch in announcing the end of the longshoremen's strike. When she tried to call Governor DeSantis to talk about the hurricane relief, he wouldn't return her call. And when asked why, he said, well, I'm dealing with the president of the United States. Why should I deal with her? And then Biden said, I've been talking to the governor. He's doing a great job. So that's once again undercutting Kamala. I'm not sure he wants her in his lucid moments. I'm not sure that he wants her to win.
I agree. There's something about, I mean, he stepped on her press conference the other day. I think he wants to show, see, it wasn't me, right? Because if she wins, it proves the narrative that he just needed to get out of the way. If she loses, he can say, see, it wasn't me. It's all of us.
Well, in that performance on, I think it was The View, when he's asked why he didn't run again, he kind of looks at the floor. He seems uncomfortable. And he said, my poll numbers were every bit as good as hers are today. I mean, I thought I could beat the guy, meaning Trump. My poll numbers were no worse than theirs, but some in the party, thought I should get out, weren't sure I could win. And maybe it was time to make room for younger people. I still think he's rightfully very bitter. They pushed him aside. They did so in a brutal manner. They embarrassed him. I'm not sure he wants her to win. He's a loose cannon here in the last 20 some odd days.
Yeah, not only that, they treated him horribly, but then they haven't even tried to show him any, modicum of respect since then. They've literally been like, you don't need to show up anywhere. We got this. And I think that he felt like he got pushed aside, to your point, and then he's been treated very badly since then. You would think that someone would say, hey, thanks for doing this. We want to respect your decision and what you've done for the party, and we're going to highlight your service and make you seem like the elder statesman that you want to be. Instead, it's, hey, Joe, stay in the corner. We're going to put you there, and we'll bring you out after the election for maybe a victory lap.
Sean, can you imagine having the sitting president of the United States have his final convention speech to a Democrat National Convention, speaking after midnight on Monday night, and then telling him to get out of town so he's not even there for the nomination of his successor? No former president has been treated like that. And let's point out who is not campaigning for Kamala. That would be Jill Biden. Jill has, I'm told, declined any request. So they roll out Barack Obama last week. That was a disaster because all he does is engage in race baiting, telling people, well, if you're black, you have to vote for her. Why? A, she's not black, and B, black men can think for themselves. They don't need Barack Obama to tell them how to vote. I thought that was a gigantic mistake. I don't think they'll take Hillary Clinton out on the campaign trail. If they do, they're going to find out that she continues to be one of the most hated people in the entire country.
It is interesting. I'm glad you brought up the Joe Biden thing. She's so bitter, and you're right about this combination. They are mad at her. And if Joe Biden really cared about her husband's legacy, she'd be out there saying, we need to vote for the first woman. We need to do this. Say a lot of the things that Kamala can't. But Gavin Newsom, where's he been? Where's Gretchen? I mean, aside, I want to talk about the Gretchen Whitmer thing, but actually, let's just do it now. Gretchen Whitmer, and I know that you're a convert to Catholicism, the ad that Gretchen Whitmer did for her, and I'll just show it to the audience now. I mean, this is disgusting, Roger. I don't know. I feel like every time I get outraged, someone says to me, really, now that you draw the line? But this is absolutely appalling to every Catholic, the way that they have dealt with the Holy Eucharist. And yet the media just allowed that to go. The Kamala Harris campaign didn't have to answer it. And you have Gretchen Whitmer handing a Dorito to some leftist feminist from Canada in sort of a depiction of the Eucharist. And I cannot believe there was no more outrage on this.
Yeah, I saw it. I showed it to my wife last night. It's really, really offensive. It's unbelievably offensive. But look, these people, they don't believe in God. They don't believe in organized religion. They don't respect our belief in God. So I guess they thought this was clever or funny, or this would somehow get them votes. I don't quite get it. But remember, these are the same people who think the endorsement of Dick Cheney, a man who lied our way into war, who claimed that the Iraqis had weapons of mass destruction, who claimed that Iraq was involved in 9/11, which of course they weren't. They seem to think that his endorsement, because he's a Republican, shows bipartisan support. I think it is a bad misreading of the country. Sean, the most exciting thing that's going on right now, I think, in politics is the realignment in which common sense Democrats and independents like Robert Kennedy, like Tulsi Gabbard, like Rod Blagojevich, they're supporting Donald Trump because it is a throwback to the old Democrat Party that believed in capitalism, free enterprise, a strong national defense, a party that was fundamentally patriotic. Yeah, that maybe the Democrats wanted to spend more and tax more than we did, but they still believed in America. That Democrat Party simply no longer exists. The party has been taken captive by a group of Marxists and other screwballs. So there is a realignment going on. As far as I'm concerned, they can have the warmongers. I'd rather have the Justice League, Tulsi Gabbard, Robert Kennedy, Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson. That's the camp I'm in.
I did get a kick out of the fact that when Liz Cheney endorsed her, Kamala Harris looked at her and said, "I'm honored to have your endorsement." And I looked at somebody that I know and I said, "So tell me 2 years ago that Kamala Harris would have ever said that about a Cheney." They used to, talk about how these people, the Cheneys, were the worst possible people and they were warmongers, as you mentioned. They were right-wing nut jobs, and now suddenly they're honored to have their endorsement. I mean, I just don't know who they think that they're helping when they say that.
I think they're seeing things in old terms. In other words,
Yes.
They see it as bipartisan support. Oh, look, we have these Republicans. Republican Democrat is not how the country breaks down anymore. Today, it's about those who are in and an outsider. Donald Trump is an outsider. Even though he served 4 terms 4 years as president, he remained an outsider. And it is his outsider agenda. You know him well, Sean. He can't be bullied. He can't be bossed. No one tells him what to think. No one tells him where to go. No one tells him what to do. He's fiercely independent. He's genuine. He's authentic. That's why he got elected. That's what people want. Partisanship, I think, is behind us. We're in a post-partisan political period. People don't decide by Republican, Democrat. I mean, obviously some do, but most people are voting for the policies and the person. And this is where I think Donald Trump shines. Anyone who looks at Kamala Harris will determine she's literally unqualified to be president. And when you begin to look at some of her decisions, her record, for example, as a prosecutor, her prosecution of this woman, Shari Peoples, whose daughter was missing from school because she had sickle cell anemia, and at 12 years old, she had a debilitating stroke. Yet, despite the fact that Shari Peoples, the Black mother who was innocent, provided all this documentation to the schools, Kamala Harris still wanted to put her in jail because her sick daughter was in the hospital and therefore not able to go to public school.
Yeah, they went after her for truancy, as if she was hanging out on a street corner. She had health care issues. The mother was bending over backwards to care for her, and they go after her for her daughter's, quote, truancy. And I'm thinking to myself, that shows, I mean, who in their right mind, regardless of party, does that to another person? And that was a badge of honor for Kamala Harris. No wonder people worry about her judgment.
Well, she actually used it, as a centerpiece of her campaign for attorney general. So she destroyed the life of this Black woman and her daughter, and they're still struggling for political gain to try to make an issue out of it. Then later, she does an interview with on the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God, and he says, "Well, did anybody actually go to jail?" She says, "No, nobody did." Well, this woman did go to jail. It is really disgraceful.
I want to get back to where we are 22 days out. She's got this problem with black men, and she's going on she went on Roland Martin's show. She's going on these other podcasts and shows catering to black men. She's rolling out an agenda for them, talking about some of the healthcare issues that are unique to black men that she'll address. She's talking about small business loans with $20,000 forgivable. It blows my mind that we're 22 days out of an election, and it's the Democrats with a black candidate that are trying to figure out how to get to black men, and that they are coming to Donald Trump, who the Democrats paint as this racist, horrible person. And the Democrats, have to admit they have a big problem with this demographic that has been so on their side since Nixon.
I mean, the bottom line is this. At this particular hour, if you believe the polling, Donald Trump's going to put up the best performance with black voters since Richard Nixon back in 1960. Not 68, since 1960. That's 64 years ago. Among Hispanic voters, Donald Trump's going to put up the best performance for Republicans since 2004 and George W. Bush.
It's very interesting. In 1960, Nixon got literally a third of the African-American vote. And that's running against John F. Kennedy. It now appears that Donald Trump is poised to perform as well, if not slightly better. That's really historic. Also true, as you know, is we're actually could get an absolute majority of Hispanic voters. The previous high water mark there for a Republican was under George W. Bush. I think it was around 38%, which at the time we thought was really great. Right. So if they have to worry about their base, that tells you a lot about what's going to happen in this election. I think
doesn't that also tell you a lot about what's going on, though, in the media, that there's this perception, whether it's Hispanics, as you mentioned, or black, we have to cater to them. And if a candidate, I saw it yesterday, Kristen Welker, what are you doing to get to them? And this goes back to, I think, the difference between how we communicate. You and I think, agree that we talk about values to Americans, all Americans, and say we're going to make this country better, safer, more prosperous. The way that the media and the Democrats believe is that we got to give you something. We've got to give you something to make you vote for us. It's got to be transactional, as opposed to saying we want your life to be better and we'll implement policies that will make it safer and more prosperous for everybody, allow you to compete.
Yeah, I completely agree. Why do we think that black voters don't want what all voters want? Economic opportunity, safe neighborhoods, better schools, affordable housing. This idea that we have to come up with some gimmick to pay you off. By the way, we'll give you $25,000 to buy a house, regardless of your ability to service a mortgage in the future. We tried that under Bill Clinton, remember?
Yep.
Andrew Cuomo was the Secretary of HUD. It was called the subprime mortgage disaster. It not only destroyed the housing industry, it caused an entire economic meltdown. So we tried that and it didn't work. But it is the Democrat playbook. You're absolutely right to try to buy these votes with a program or a grant or funding. I don't think it will work.
So I want to ask you about something that I is a pet peeve of mine. The Democrats argue that people who enter this country illegally, i.e. break a law to come into the country, and then we give them a free driver's license, that those folks will stop at the line of registering to vote because, well, that's illegal. So you'll break the law to come into this country. We give you a free driver's license, but then, God forbid, you won't vote because, well, that's illegal. Well, then Glenn Youngkin and other folks, but Glenn Youngkin, my governor here in Virginia, cleans up the voter rolls and says these non-citizens need to be taken off the voter laws. And the Biden DOJ sues Virginia. Now, what other conclusion could you possibly come to at this point to say that the Democrats truly want you to vote?
Yeah, I talked to a lawyer I know about this last night because I'm not a lawyer. I can't understand even what argument they could make. The Constitution is clear. The state laws are clear. You have to be a U.S. citizen to vote. So what is their argument that you should not remove these non-citizens from the voting rolls? It's hard for me to even imagine what argument they make. But as you know, they've gone to court in multiple states, I think Arizona as well, to fight people who are not eligible to vote based on their citizenship from being on the rolls. When I said this in a speech in Jacksonville the other day, that I thought there were at least a million ineligible voters, people who are dead, people who moved, people who are not citizens. people who never existed at all that needed to be cleaned from the rolls. I was attacked for planning to stage a coup. That's how crazy these people are. No, the only people who should vote are people who are legally eligible to vote. I give Glenn Youngkin huge credit for making this move. We need to have a free, fair, honest, transparent election. If we do, I think Donald Trump will win.
But don't you agree? I mean, my position is if you put up all these roadblocks to ensuring that only U.S. citizens do vote, then one needs to question your motives. If you keep telling me that you want to give them a free driver's license, that you don't want us to clean up voter rolls, then it's got to be that your intention is that they actually do vote.
I don't think there's any question about that. I think the Democrats want illegals to vote. Here in Florida, you can go to the motor vehicles department and register to vote. No one asks you for proof of citizenship. No one asks you to prove that you're actually eligible, and you go on the voter rolls. And that's the largest single source of new registrants in the state. So I think we have to conclude, as you say, the Democrats want illegals to vote because they think they will vote for the folks who let them in the country illegally and who are giving them, in New York State, for example, a prepackaged credit card, a cell phone, a place to live. I mean, American citizens, particularly seniors and veterans, have been thrown out of housing in New York so that we can house illegals. None of this makes any sense.
Yeah. I want to ask you an interesting question because I believe, as we've seen over the last several cycles, the Democrats, big tech, Hollywood will go to all lengths to block Donald Trump. They believe that he is an existential threat to their way of life. And we've seen this from the fake Russia hoax to the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop, right? Over and over again to what Google does and what others do to make sure that, you know, when you ask the whatever it is, the Google thing about who to vote for, it says Kamala Harris is great and I can't comment on Donald Trump, right? All of the searches and the shadow bans. But there was something else that happened that was interesting to me. There's a movie that I have not seen called The Apprentice that is coming out now that I believe, from the little that I know, and I will admit I haven't seen it, that it is an attempt to paint Donald Trump in a negative light. They want to, this is Hollywood's way of trying to show Donald Trump in a negative way so that you don't like him, and it's their little effort to this. My understanding is you're portrayed in the movie. Have you seen it? Do you share my view, or do you think I'm just going over the top on this?
No, I have seen it. The only good thing about it I can say is I knew the lawyer, Roy Cohn, who represented Donald Trump early in his career, and the depiction of him, I mean, just in terms of the way he acted and spoke and moved, is quite good. It's a hatchet job on Trump. It's very, very rough on Trump. You know who's going to go see it? People who already don't like Donald Trump. This movie's not going to sway anybody because you can see from the outside what it is. By the way, the actor who plays me, I'm much better looking than that guy.
Well, the funny thing is, somebody in my comment section on the live issue last night said, I saw the movie. I told people you're coming on, and they said, the actor who played you, they said they thought they did a really good job. Did you have a problem? Obviously with the physical, but did they do a good job representing you, do you think?
It was interesting. First of all, I'm a little better dressed than that. But
you are a very good dresser.
But beyond that, I think the guy did an okay job. Look, two things are true. It is true that in 1988, I probably was the first person to suggest to Donald Trump that he should run for president. And it was true that I recruited he and his father to join Ronald Reagan's campaign finance committee in 1980. And they were both very big Reagan supporters. For those who try to say Trump's not a conservative or wasn't a conservative, that's false. So, look, I don't recommend it in all honesty, unless, and the only people who are going to see it are people who don't like Trump. It's well crafted. The movie is well crafted, but there are parts of it that I think are just largely fictitious. Much of it is written based on a book by Harry Hurt III that was written 20 years ago. And there's a lot of things in that book that I just don't think are correct.
Okay, well, you made me feel better then. Roger Stone, always great to see you. If you're not subscribing to the Stone Zone, you get this all the time. So I would go to the Stone Zone on Substack, check it out. Obviously, a great show that you put on every day as well. Thanks for joining us. Always appreciate your insight.
Great to be with you, and I must say I'm liking the beard. I think the
my wife is not going to want to hear that. So coming from such a well-dressed man, that's one more point for me. I appreciate that, though. Thank you.
It's a good look.
Thank you.
Thank you, and God bless you.
Thanks, Roger. All right, guys, what a great conversation. He's always so insightful. And as you mentioned, I mean, he's known Trump for this long, right? I think that's what's cool about Rogers. You get such a perspective of where Trump has been and where he's coming. And he talks about him backing Reagan and how he's always been a true conservative. I think that's something that I think is pretty cool, right? This is where this race is at. Trump surging in the final 22 days, the ground game. We talked about this on the live show last night. I felt a lot better. It's amazing what that does, doesn't it? Hearing these people on the ground talk to you about the ground game, how many knocks they've made on doors, where things have been historically, what to see on election night. We'll do this again at some point. Trust me, you don't have to worry if you didn't see it last night, although you can go back and watch it. It's pretty cool to see the people come in each one of the states. And you guys know, as I've been doing this, I've been saying that I thought Nevada's 6 electoral votes were going to end up with her. And maybe they will, because we got last night to 312. 312. If you take Nevada off, you still, I mean, that's 306. Not bad. I mean, heck, you could still lose one of the blue wall states in well over 270 as well. But when you hear the folks in Nevada tell you about the registration numbers and why you should feel better, that makes me feel better. I slept like a baby. I had my little beam, by the way. You know that. I talk about it all the time. I took my scoop of beam, stirred it around, got some, drank it. 30 minutes later, I'm out. But that's aside. I felt better hearing people that are there and know the history of those states talk about what's happening. I talked to Ashley Hayek from America First Works, as you heard on the thing last night. They are out there actually targeting that Muslim Arab population in Detroit, in the Detroit suburbs. This is huge. The stuff that all of these guys are doing add an element that you don't hear about on the news every day. And this is what makes this so unique. And so when you have these conversations with people about why you think, it's not just a gut, because of these issues or blah, 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 blah. It's all based on data. It's based on door knocks, registration, early vote numbers, right? And you hear about what's happening. Like the early vote and the absentee vote numbers are not coming in where Democrats would like it. I also felt much better hearing about where North Carolina stands. I was so worried. I still am. But knowing that they're making huge steps to rectify these issues from the devastation of Helene makes me feel better that they're going to be able to get out there and vote, and that the steps are being taken to give these folks the opportunity to do that. That's super helpful in a state that's super close. All right, I mentioned tomorrow Newt Gingrich is on the show. He's always delivers. I mean, the guy's so brilliant when it comes to political strategy, and he's got a lot of perspective to share on where we've been and what Trump's doing. He's written a ton of books on Trump too, so he really knows the subject. Later in the week, as I mentioned, Eric Hovde, the candidate from Wisconsin, will be with us to talk about Wisconsin overall, how that race is trending, how Wisconsin is trending, because every pollster we've had on tells us this is one of the hardest states to poll. So we'll find out how Wisconsin is going. So you're going to want to hit that notification button, hit the subscription button, and share. If you know someone who could benefit from watching that Road to 270, go to my YouTube page and share the link with somebody so they watch it. It was amazing how many of you watched it live with us. And obviously every morning we're on the morning meeting at 9 o'clock here on the YouTube page. Thanks for joining that as well. But guys, for the final 21, which is what tomorrow is going to bring, there is no better place to know what's happening from the inside than this show. So thank you for joining. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing the news. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.